It's amazing.
This is working. I hope it's working. I don't know.
It's an amazing
It'll
thing.
work when we get comments.
Yeah, fair.
Fair enough. So what we're doing here, if you're catching us live on Facebook, which I hope you are on a Wednesday night at 9:15 Eastern, we're going to do some Q&A. In the meantime, I'm going to start off with asking Norman a question. What did you do for Election Day?
Oh, amazing. So I guess if we are going to talk about elections, we do have to sort of note that, hey, we're a 501c3, so we're not endorsing candidates or telling people that. But now that it's post-election, I'm not sure what matters anymore.
Can chastise them for not voting for a certain.
I mean,
candidate?
I guess we can't. I guess we shouldn't talk about the elections that are like going to go to a runoff. Although I think that's really funny. So I kind of want to talk about that somewhat. But
are you saying that there's going to be some people run off with all the votes? That's not what you mean, is it?
Man, you already are hitting the bad puns. We're like not even 2 minutes in. Not even 2 minutes in.
I'd be a bad host.
Absolutely terrible. Wow. Okay. Well, so I don't know. What did I do for the polls? Actually, I did take my children to the polls. One of the polling centers is like there's like literally 2 polling centers within about 200 yards of each other. There's this little church that's at the at the corner of 2 streets that I have to go through them in order to get one of my kids to his class, his little school. And so I was dropping off all the kids yesterday. And so I dropped off my eldest, and then we knew we were going to have extra time. So I was like, you know what? Let's just see if there's if this polling center is kind of available, if it's crowded or not. And so it looked pretty good. I mean, we got it close to the door parking spot. It was no problem at all. And so we were like, you know what, let's just go in. So I brought my children in. I laughed at the sign that said, no electioneering within 25 feet of this door. And my daughter was like, what? And I said, no electioneering. Ha ha ha. My daughter was like, what's electioneering? And I was like,
teachable moment.
Okay. Yeah, well, actually, the more teachable moment was to say, what you're about to observe is the sacrament of the civil religion, children. We are going to, and that just, and they look up quizzically at me like, what are you talking about, Dad? And it's like, well, we'll find out. And then, there wasn't very long, and didn't take us long to get through, and they offered the I voted stickers to my children. I was like, they don't need them. It's like, do you want one? Nope. So, but the main reason I was kind of even really interested to vote overall was that the ballot measure for there were a number of constitutional amendment measures in Missouri, one of which being cannabis legalization and expungement.
Okay.
Which is kind of it's interestingly controversial because I don't have any problem saying that, of course, I am 100% against the drug war, and even though I don't care about recreational pot per se or anything like that. That's not my interest, and it never has been, and don't intend for it to be. But I think it's really quite fascinating, that basically we're approaching the point of total legalization, and the fact that it's also had an expungement component to it of low level convictions. I think that's what I'm given to understand. I haven't researched it thoroughly, but that was important. Even so, it is also kind of a legalize and tax it measure, which is why, in fact, the certain actually, I think it was multiple parties did not even endorse the measure, which is interesting, including the Libertarian Party. Not that that is indicative of what position one ultimately has to take with regards to it, but it was just interesting that was it made news.
Was that the only ballot initiative?
No, there were actually about 4 constitutional amendments, and there's also an interesting voting measure or ballot measure for whether or not Missouri should call for a constitutional convention. I had either never learned this or had forgotten that in Missouri, I think starting in like 1947, it became required for there to at least be a measure on the ballot calling for a constitutional convention once every 20 years, and or something to that effect. And there hasn't been one in like 40 years here.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and to revise and blah blah
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, you know what? You guys need to follow your own rules first, so shut that one down. So yeah, no, yeah,
Oh.
whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that was sort of the measure of voting.
We-
After writing, spending the the better part of the prior evening writing about Romans 13 and voting, which was fun. Responding to some stuff that I'd seen in other popular presses.
Yeah, you've got this Romans 13 thing going, which I think is
Yeah.
really cool. Tell us a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes there. You've got a Google
Okay.
alert, I think, right?
Sorry, say again.
You have a Google alert about Romans
Oh,
13. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. See, if you wanted to join me and you could kind of figure this out probably with me. Um, yeah, I got it a while ago. I started a Google alert because I wanted to see whenever and however Romans 13 got brought up in the news anywhere or blog posts, basically anywhere. And so what it does is that along with other Google alerts I've got set up, it will daily inform me of various instances where Romans 13 makes it into some type of article. And largely the purpose of this ongoing has been that I want to garner materials that would become fodder for articles. And the idea being that, most of the time when Romans 13 is brought up in the popular literature, especially, it will not be done particularly well. It'll often be used as proof texting. It'll be, used to justify some sort of weird position and will basically be wrong. And so the thought process being, okay, well, let's respond to those things. And
Yeah.
would it, and I didn't know, like, is this going to be something easy to do? Is it going to be difficult to do? But I'm started just collecting links and whatnot and noting. And I started doing this actually before the Ukraine conflict started. So it was early, it was before the end of February of this year so I can't remember exactly when I started it. But at any rate, I've been just kind of collecting links and whatnot, and kind of thinking about how I would, respond to various things, and so I've been, you know, really, I guess it's been only in the last kind of 2 months or so that I've been kind of more actively consider like turning it into a regular writing session for myself, and so I thought that was kind of cool. There's some, so I've got what three. You could sort of count a fourth article on some level because
Hmm.
more broadly speaking, even though it's about Romans 13 in general, in some sense, the purpose of the series is to look at the way in which scripture is used in popular media and really in popular writing, your news articles, blog posts, and pundits, and see what they're saying and respond. So like three out of the four really are about Romans 13, and one is my diatribe against Governor Newsom in California for his
Oh, terrible
absolute idiot
billboards.
behavior. And yeah, his billboard fiasco, which of course, it didn't pose him any risk at all for his reelection campaign per se, but
Yeah.
he's got no shame, uh, and it's pretty dumb. But at any rate, yeah. So I spent over the last week and a half or so, I've been thinking about like how I would address kind of the Romans 13 and voting um, aspect,
Hmm.
and because I wanted to just see like I mean, obviously, as we've been approaching election season, there has been an uptick in what people want to talk about with respect to uh, Christianity in the state and voting in particular, candidates, and then there's a lot of confusion out there. And I mean, especially since 2016 or really 2015, you could say, what with the advent of Trumpism, you get some interesting, you know, there's been shifts in the way that people have thought and behaved with respect to their voting patterns.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, so that article was kind of focused in on something the Gospel Coalition had published, and in some sense, I don't think it's necessarily the greatest. It's not the greatest thing I've ever written or anything, but it's it's interesting to kind of parse through the argumentation procedure or protocols that they kind of go through, or maybe not protocols, but the argumentation schemas that they kind of go through in order to justify positions, and analyzing the logic and critiquing their line of thinking is kind of the point in the end.
Yeah. So I'm getting some.
I don't know. Did you read it, Doug? No.
I haven't yet. What I am reading, though, is our notes from our staff.
Oh,
I like saying that phrase, that there's a delay. And so I'm jumping in here just a little bit to talk because we're trying to figure out whether or not it's a delay between the audio and the video are out of sync. And I'm
pretty close on what I'm seeing.
Well, and I'm looking at myself here and seeing that it is a little bit delayed.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to figure that out.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to get a note here. All right. Yeah. Carrie's texting us here. This is great.
Yeah, work out those bugs.
Life at LCI is better when it's not just you and me, Norm.
It's true. It is true. It's
I'm not
great
as
having
bad
a
as
team.
Norm. Well, it's just weird because in normal for me, and for Carrie, it's yeah.
Hi, Jamie Bueller.
Not delayed, Jamie. Thank you, Jamie. That's good to know. Can you tell whether or not Norm or I were delayed differently? We'll see if he can.
We'll see. We'll see how fast he can respond.
Well, in Pennsylvania, it was like a one-sided ballot. It was paper. I guess that's how most do. I don't know what other states do. And it was governor, Senate race, House race, I think, and maybe one other. And it was essentially there was one, the state house representative, who happens to live like 3 doors down from me, but like on the street behind me. And I got to know him during COVID because everybody was walking on our road. We have a one road. One side of a road has a big farm. It's a nice view. A lot of people walk on our road in our neighborhood. So we got to meet Keith. So of course I voted for him. He's a Republican. He thinks that libertarians are great except on pot. And I'm like, of all things,
are great except on pot.
Well, he's like, that was the one thing I just can't legalize. I just can't vote for that or whatever. And I didn't get to convince him otherwise. I should give him a copy of our book. I don't know why I haven't. But anyway, I voted for the libertarians when there was libertarians, and I did not. There wasn't. Anyway, I'm not going to share everything of how. I'm not going to share anything of everything about how I voted. But yeah,
it's funny. I was just about an hour ago. I was reading a biography of David Lipscomb that I picked up. I'll bring it when I visit you, Doug. You can take a look. It's getting all sorts of little notes in it now.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was interesting to kind of see this guy's summation of Lipscomb's position on civil government, and talking about how even as it pertains to voting, that that is participation enough to basically say no, this is not permitted by Christian doctrine. And it's very interesting that sort of position. And for those interested, there will be much more about Lipscomb that will come out in the coming years. Projects are afoot.
Yes,
it'll be fun.
Yes, they are indeed. All right, we got our first question, man.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, Eli. Thank you for loving LCI. How can we answer questions from fellow believers regarding 1 Peter 2:11 through 17? If I'm not mistaken, that is honor the emperor passage.
Well, yeah, so I was pulling my Bible down and opening the passage, and because I was thinking that it would be the 1 Peter version of the submit yourselves to authority section. The request being verse 11. That's the one that starts, that is, as aliens and strangers in the world, abstain from sinful desires which war against your soul, live good lives among pagans, so that even though they might accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day He visits us. On one level, I would kind of ask Eli, and so maybe as we're discussing this, you can bring in additional context to your question with respect to, which part of that do you think that fellow believers are going to be addressing as it pertains to, either what we're about as LCI and the types of positions that we hold as kind of Christian libertarians, or is it something else? So I may begin to, we'll probably discuss this a little bit. And, if you want to provide some additional context or whatnot, we'd be happy to kind of take that into account. But in verse 13, that's where it goes to the submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every authority instituted among men. And I think that really, as it pertains to those verses, which is 13, 14, and 15, those are just kind of analogous to the Romans 13 argument. So you could kind of use the same sort of argumentation about what is Romans 13 about to discuss this is what that Peter is making a similar point in slightly different language. 16 and 17 is where you see, the 16 in particular says, live as free men, but do not use your freedom as a cover up for evil. Live as servants of God. This I think is a crucial point with respect to why we also don't we don't want to use not only do we not want to use our freedom as license, okay, because we say we were set free from sin because of Christ, right? And there are even in the first century, you saw individuals who said, well, we basically would use it as cover for antinomianism. That's the $5 seminary word for saying that I can sin and do whatever I want because God's just going to forgive me. That's the quick way of explaining it, right? A slightly different tact on that is when in the book of Romans, where it says, shall we do evil that good may result? It starts off in that passage about, we can, should we, I'm going to say, I'm sure I'm going to butcher this. So I'm going to try to not do so. Does not the act of sinning or something that I do that is wrong just glorify Christ all the more because of his glory and forgiveness? And Paul says, no, of course not. It's crazy. So there's that aspect of it. In the context of the civil authority, though, there's also some sense that there was and this is elucidated I think Lipscomb does this as well, but also in John Cobin's books, Bible and Government, Christian Theology of Public Policy. You'll see this in some other sources, and off the top of my head, I'm not bringing them to mind, but that there was a thought in first century that perhaps that, because we are free in Christ, that means that all of the civil authorities among us, they are so illegitimate that we can just rebel with physical force, essentially. And that is also repudiated in a sense, which is, it's interesting because that also kind of comes into the question, or raises the question of things like, well, what about the American Revolution? I'm not going to address that right now, but I'll just note that is part of that. The concluding the point in verse 17, show proper respect to everyone, love the brotherhood of believers, fear God, honor the king. I think that's just totally analogous to exactly what you see in Romans 13. So similar kinds of arguments that we would make about what Romans 13 is about, we would make here. Doug, do you want to add anything to that?
I do not have anything to add. I think that was really good. Eli does follow up a little bit. Is this similar, this phrasing, honoring the emperor, is it similar to Jesus being like, just pay taxes to Caesar?
Yeah.
Pay tribute is to be more precise and to provide context. So I like that way of describing it.
I think it's appropriate to differ. Okay, actually, let me back up. And so short answer, yes, there is a connection there. And a variety of interpreters will, beyond myself, will make that connection. That being said, there are differentiating points and nuance in what is going on in Matthew chapter 20, Matthew 21, and in the parallel passages elsewhere in the other Gospels, with the render to Caesar passage. The fact that that there is a story, there's a narrative that's taking place right there. It's not just a lecture about the nature of the state or something like that. But there is in a way a conspiracy afoot and Jesus is responding to them in a way that exposes them for what they're doing. And again, I'll recommend, and Doug has linked that up in the chat there. If you go to that Romans 13 section and look at my writing on New Testament theology of the state, it may be called something a little different. I can't remember what the current title is on our website. Sometimes I think it's gone through some adjustments for SEO purposes.
Yeah.
But
let me. I'm gonna share my screen so we can see the page.
Oh,
here.
okay.
So just give it a little bit of a.
And Calvin notes that Jesus says, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar, what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God." Yeah, you could. Yeah, that is exactly what he says. And so there different interpreters bring up like, well, what does belong to Caesar? What does belong to God? Well, clearly, what belongs to God is everything. I mean, his claim of ownership is on the basis that he kind of created it all. But that's also a different quality of ownership, in a sense, than what we think about with respect to property rights and things like that, which are different. I think it is qualitatively different.
Yeah, so we have a lot of Romans 13 resources. This is probably one of our biggest pages. I just noticed that my interview with Jacob is not in this, so I should
hasn't
go
been
back
done
yet. Well, no, where is it here? The state is doing Romans 13 wrong, I think, is where that that was. Let's see here if I can find it here. By the way, for those of you who are joining us, join us for the big announcement. Okay.
Oh, hello.
Because
big
that's
announcement
happening soon.
What's going on?
Let's just see here. Where was it? Man, was this forever ago? Oh, there it is. Episode 287. The state is doing Romans 13 wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, with our good friend Jacob.
Excellent. Hey, look, it's a style guide.
Oh, did you see that when I was
that came up for a sec.
Someone's gonna screen grab that and then steal all of our branding.
Oh no. Steal our intellectual property.
Let's see. He gives to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and God what belongs to God. Yeah. I don't know. Does Caesar really own anything?
Well, that was what we were touching on while you were finding that stuff.
Yeah.
I'll note, by the way, before you go any farther, like Eli is makes there's a meta point around what Eli is saying, which I think is a good thing to remember here, is that there is more than Romans 13 where we do want to address in Scripture, stuff that is analogous to Romans 13, and a lot more than that as well. And 1 Peter 2 has been on my list of like things I probably want to go in and do some serious exegesis on down the line, but I haven't written a paper on it, which is unfortunate. Is you can only do so much, right?
Okay. Carrie's telling me that I didn't tell anybody when the announcement was happening.
Oh, well, yeah, you should give more details on that.
So that is the Friday.
That's cool. You can do that.
I can do that. I can highlight a comment. I guess that's so if I wanted to turn off this, I could simply say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to, hey, Calvin, this is your question. This is great. I'm really glad we're doing this.
Oh, yeah. We're like, this is a new technology for us, so we're getting to play.
Yeah. We're getting to play and a little bit of fun and make me feel better about leading things on Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you, Carrie.
9 Eastern, 8 Central.
Doc Dixon was right about you, Carrie. I'll leave it at that. All right. First, he asked what is unscripted on the coin, to which the scribes who were trying to trick him into saying things that would get him into trouble, who respond, Caesar is. Yeah, you got to listen to my interview with Doc Dixon to notice that comment that I just made about Carrie. Okay, so here's one thing that I don't remember who it was that it might have been Greg Boyd who was talking about this, and the idea behind Jesus being asked, or saying, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, render unto God what is God's," is that he was essentially in the context, boiled down after 10 minutes of whoever the preacher was telling his take on this. Was basically Jesus being sarcastic and saying, well, if Caesar thinks he owns this, then just let him have it. Like, God owns everything. Caesar thinks he owns this gold or this coin, whatever the coin was made of. And if he thinks that, then let him have it. Let him think he's getting something. And there was just a bit of sarcasm there.
Is it Jesus's way of saying, the Supreme Court has ruled, now let them enforce it?
Oh my word. I don't
That's
know.
pretty bad.
Yeah.
Wasn't that Andrew Jackson or something?
Yeah, it was, Calvin, right. There's some cleverness going on in how Jesus was dealing with things, and so it he could be trapped either way. And Norm, I think I'm not familiar with it as much. You probably are as well, and I think Paul did that a little bit with some of his seemingly pro-state like comments, like ones in like in Romans 13, where he was using language that would not get flagged by the censors
Yeah.
and by the what would you call it back then?
Well, the authorities.
Yeah, well, that's too bland.
Oh,
The essay of the Roman Empire. That's what
yeah,
say.
Roman Empire. I'm from an academic perspective, at least, I'm not wholly convinced by the kind of sarcasm point, but I do think that it would be appropriately understood as a it's a non-inciting type of language that he's using, and that the language is you could sort of partially coded, but not in the same sense that, say, the book of Revelation is. The book of Revelation is is all sorts of kind of symbols and whatnot that are meant to allude to Babylon, the kingdom, to Greece, to Rome in particular. And granted, I'm not a you can premillennial dispensationalist, you are entitled to your opinion, but I don't believe that. And but I think that the partial preterism position is correct, and that the symbols that are brought in Revelation are very much coded along the lines of describing the Roman Empire, and what is going to happen to it, and that it will eventually fall, and that is extensible, whatever,
extendable,
toward kind of an absolute sense, that is the destiny of all human governments, because at the fall of man is the however you want to look at Genesis at all, the fall of man, as we are told, is the beginning of man's rebellion against God. It is built into Babel, as and as we're to understand that as being like, the more that humans organize into these structures of power like this, it is even in greater rebellion against God. And Babel means confusion and strife. That is what Babel does. That is what Babel is. And so that from the beginning to the end, you see those symbols are meant to describe the way in which people rebel against God, organize themselves in the form of these types of structures, including governments, and those cause confusion, they cause strife, they cause despair and problems all over the place, preventing prosperity, and that it is the ultimate destiny of all those things to be destroyed. So that's I'm going a little off a field, but
no, that's fine. I mean, we're talking about the state and empire, and
but the code word, though, in like what is Paul talking about then? And like, even on the Romans 13 side, you have to kind of see it as a realistic command that will enable Christians to minimize their interactions with the powers that be, so that they can focus then on upbuilding the correct kingdom, that is the kingdom of God. That participation, and varying interpreters will go nearer or farther to this view, but
thank you, Jamie.
But participation in the upbuilding of the human government is you're basically building up that which God is desiring to destroy. And why would we want to do that? That's kind of the argument for why you don't participate in the state or as getting as far away from that as you can. Okay.
I'm looking at some of these features here that
Yeah.
our platform gives us, and I can do a lower third that says "Do your part to support the people of Ukraine." Hashtag Stand with
Oh,
Ukraine.
geez.
Like, okay, I think I'm good.
So return of okay. So return of the Bomba Squad, Bomba Squad. Okay. Ask what do we think of the post-libertarian movement? Um, and people like Pete Quinones giving up on things like the NAP or the non-aggression principle. Um, in short, I don't like it. And I think for a couple of reasons. One is that I think that it is trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. Varying points in the liberty movement's history, there have been positive and negative moves. Whether we're talking about, I mean, for decades, it was a nascent movement entirely. From to the point at which Albert J. Nock writes an essay called called Isaiah's Job, which sidebar for a second, it's always funny to kind of read that if you're like, Isaiah's Job,
I
what does
know
that
it's
mean?
Old
But
Testament books, man. I was
but
like, what the heck is this?
yeah, why are you doing this to me, Albert? But Albert J. Nock's article called Isaiah's Job is fantastic, and should be considered essential reading for every libertarian. But what he's describing is that there's, at the time, there's like the cause of individual liberty is not going too well. I mean, but there always is a remnant of people who actually care and are gonna do something about it. And that's I think people like kind of in that vein of Quinones and whatnot seem to forget this, and that there's going to be kind of upticks of interest, and then there's going to be downswings, and well, we're gonna we kind of have to live through that. But what we shouldn't be is fair weather about it. So if you're discouraged about the cause of liberty, look, you're not the first. And like, but the great, at least the great thing about being a Christian libertarian in this instance, and frankly, what many of the early libertarians, because they were Christians too, we shouldn't forget that. The great thing about being a Christian libertarian is that even if the apparent viewing of the cause is not looking too great for an immediate future, well, look, we have an eternal hope, so there you go. Like, you should be sold. And so, it's like we're going to go where the truth leads us. That's what we're at as Christians, no matter what. And in as much as does libertarian still describe what we're doing? Why would we want to give up on the nap? I don't. That's the other thing. So kind of first point is my son upstairs.
Sounds like somebody's playing billiards.
Yeah, he kind of is in a manner.
Oh, okay.
But it's he's throwing things on his mattress and whatnot. It's a thing. Whatever. We won't get into that. But
kid's gonna be kid.
So the post-libertarian movement seems to me it's like these people are kind of discouraged about the cause of liberty, but that doesn't seem to me to be anything new. And then the second thing being like, if what you're asking is like, well, you're trying to change the essence of libertarianism because of what? Like what failed you about it? Like what about the philosophy changed? Are the reasons why you were a libertarian, did they change?
Yeah.
Like, why? If the reason you were a libertarian is because you were trying to get something out of it in this sense, well, then maybe you were in the wrong movement. I mean, like, come on. Is it true or is it not? Do you pursue the truth or are you pursuing some type of consequentialist ideal? I don't do that. Like, I'm not into that. If it's true, then
it does seem that it's very much based on strategy and a perceived threat, predominantly by the woke left in some way, and it is the current monster. The strategic failures, for lack of a better word, of the Libertarian Party might be sort of frustrating. The fact that you don't see a lot of progress on those fronts, which I think is disputable. And I think when you take the long game, it's not as depressing. But it seems to me that it's very much about strategy, and it's about, well, we need to take back what we can because there is power. I think it's I don't know I was listening to, I think, Charlie Kirk, who it might have been
Oh,
Charlie
goodness.
Kirk, or it might have been
Ew.
could have been Chris Rufo. I can't remember, but one of them said, I think it was Charlie Kirk, was kind of like, look, there are levers of power. Someone's going to grab them. We need to keep them out of the hands of the bad people. And it's like, that's a very appealing message. Whether you think that's a good idea or not, whether you think that's, you can be somewhat strategic and make sure that we can, like, okay, I'm going to grab the lever and I'm going to
Yeah.
unscrew it so that there's no levers. I'm going to
Okay.
dismantle. That's okay, fine. We can judge that, but he's not wrong that there are levers of power. It's a matter of what do we do about the fact that they exist? And I think a lot of times the post-libertarians are basically saying, yeah, you libertarians are about the levers that exist, and we shouldn't have it this way. We should, well, but we do, and we need to go do something, and that's where we depart ways, of course. But yeah,
if you want to, like, I mean, you want to disagree about certain strategies, like, okay, but you should understand that, like, if your strategy uses immoral means, then you're kind of sunk. I mean, like, why are we doing this to begin with?
well, even beyond, like, let's even allow that, okay, the means are not questionable morally. It's the question that comes back for me is, well, is this the power you want in the hands of the opposite party or the opposite side, right? You could say that we need to have laws that enshrine something that you find as a good, or you can make sure that you don't have to enshrine something, and that way they can't either. Like, like lately, it's the fight over whether or not you're allowed to have critical race theory in schools, and it's like, well, why should Ron DeSantis get to decide if certain district wants them to know about it? Like, let's say all the people in Miami-Dade County are like, yeah, we're into this. Like, Ron DeSantis should, like, just forbid them from it. Like, it goes both ways, and so banning something versus forcing something is sort of the way that the Republicans and the Democrats seem to be battling that, at least an issue like that.
Yeah, there are confounding problems by there seem to me to be some confounding problems with you when you try to kind of address that sort of policy.
Yeah.
And I think there's some folks who've done a pretty good job of elucidating what that, what those problems are. I mean, you can, whether you're looking at, stuff going on, like writings from different, corners of the libertarian sphere, if you will, whether you're looking at like what Reason is written or what Mises.org, folks at Reason, folks at Mises, folks at Fee, folks at Independent Institute. I mean, like, you can get a pretty good idea of like some of the kind of problems on those sort of sides, and looking at it from different kinds of angles, if you will. But but fundamentally, like, it's one thing to suggest that, okay, well, if part of the strategy is win so that you can dismantle stuff, like that's okay. But like, if your point is to go win so you can hold the reins of power over the other side, well, I'm sorry, like, that's really antithetical to what, like, that's when you begin to start using the immoral means.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Like, that's not a victory. That's like, I mean, and to say like, well, the left, they won't accept anything other than total victory and total destruction of your side, so you should do the same. It's like, are we to fight this battle using those means? I thought that was kind of the point. Libertarianism is a theory of justice, and is a philosophy that it is not about just the ends, but about means. That if we can have, like, shall we do evil that good may result, as we talked about earlier? Really? That's a by no means answer from Paul in the book of Romans.
Our number one fan has something to say here, Norm.
Oh, hey, there's my mom. What do you know? Not bad, not bad. Yeah. Ideas are bulletproof. That's Yep. Yeah, so
about not seeking power over others.
That's right. And so it just doesn't, I don't know. And so if post-libertarianism, or if post-libertarians' critique is really just a matter of like thinking we need to think a little different about strategy, sure, I'm willing to have that discussion. No problem. And I I have a particular mission in what I'm trying to contribute into the libertarian sphere of things, and especially as it pertains to understanding the theology of the state, so that more, even kind of more important to that is the way we think about the state from the perspective of the church. That's what's important to me. So, for as it pertains to the strategy, like I've got my mission and I'm doing my thing. So if we want to talk about other strategy components and what we might think about that, that's one thing. What I'm not willing to do is give up on libertarianism. Okay. And that's where I think that's kind of the final bit is to me, is that if these guys are just kind of way station libertarians, as Stefan Kinsella, my good man Stefan likes to say sometimes, to where, well, when it's popular, cool, yeah, I'll be a libertarian, but as it becomes evident that maybe the thing that I was wanting is not going to happen in the time frame that I want, well, I should just switch sides and get what I want, or something like that. Like, nope, that's not what we're here for. Sorry. And if that's what post-libertarians are revealing about themselves, is that they never really were on board in the end with what we're actually about, then run away from them.
It seems like if someone has been like, this isn't for me anymore, but they sort of embrace the ideas temporarily, or maybe they embrace the ideas, because they were in vogue in their college, dorm mates or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's almost like I'm a libertarian, or I believe in list the item, but then we all know where that goes. It's like, well, okay, well, do you really? Like, do you really believe that freedom is a way of loving your neighbor, as a way of, I want to say the word ordering society, but permitting society to self order?
Is the philosophy true?
That's right.
If it's true, then like there's not the discussion ends at that point. Like, I mean,
yeah.
Are you?
Well, then I'll just be a better libertarian and stop complaining about how the libertarians you don't think are doing it right aren't doing it right.
Yeah, it comes to like as we were saying, like it comes down to like the difference between the philosophy and the strategy. Those can be disambiguated, and we can disagree about elements of strategy, and if we want to have that discussion, like fine, but then we could end up with the discussion about whether or not that means that certain means are permitted to be used or not, on the basis of do they comport with libertarian ideals and ethical ideals that we hold to be true, not convenient, not not appropriate in certain times, but not others. But is it true all the time? Yeah. And that should be a very familiar thing for us as Christians, right? And that's one of the great things that why libertarians who have historically maybe been resistant to promoting these ideas to Christians have been like, we're trying to tell them, like, we understand, if you want to say this is true, regardless of what anybody else says about it, is it more akin to 1 + 1 = 2 than to whether or not I have a preference? Well, if it's the former and not the latter, then Christians are going to be your best friends.
Yeah, it's well said.
Maybe. I don't know about well said, but it's a thing that I said.
It was said. Well, those are words that came out of your mouth.
On the record.
Oh man, I was uploading a video here so that I could share this. This is the invite for Friday.
Oh,
and also so that we can test what we're doing with a video that we're playing on Friday. So we're gonna have to wait here for about 10 more seconds for this to process, and we're gonna test this out.
We have to fill up 10 seconds with something. What else do we say?
Well, we Jesus is Lord.
Yep. Caesar is not.
Jesus.
Yeah. That's easy. Oh man. I'm absolutely loving
Jesus Lord again.
I found out, so just alluding back, so I was talking about this David Lipscomb biography I've been reading, and it was published in like 1979 by a gentleman who at the time, like, he's kind of alluding in the introduction that, like, he's not a spring chicken, and he's not like some 20-year-old who's like doing all this historical study for like a PhD thesis or something like that. So I mean, this is like, okay, that's 40 years ago. And so I actually started looking around and figuring out, it's like, is this guy still alive? Because I would estimate that if he's still alive, he's probably like 85 or 90,
Yeah. Okay.
maybe even more. And like, man, this could be he might be dead. I really want to figure this out. Is he still around? I found out he's still living.
Nice.
Yeah. I managed to track him down. I'm gonna hopefully get his email. So
That's pretty cool. All right, I got a video to play, and this will be how we end. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Hopefully, you'll join us on Friday. Let's see how.
Everyone, as the host of the Libertarian Christian podcast and the CEO of the Libertarian Christian Institute, I'd like to invite you to a very special online event we're having to celebrate 300 episodes of the Libertarian Christian podcast. Yeah, I know, you're thinking, an online event? We're not in a pandemic any longer, Doug. Well, fair enough, but what's special about this event is that we'll be recording our 300th episode, and we want you to be a part of it by joining us live for a very special announcement. If you've been following what LCI has been up to lately, you know that we love creating content that equips Christians to make the Christian case for a free society. And as a nonprofit, we also have to be strategic with how we use our funds to create new resources. That's why this announcement is so important to us. We get to share with you something we've been cooking up for several months, but it's been in the making for several years. By joining us for our live stream 300th episode on November 11th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, you will be the first to hear about this special announcement about the future of LCI and the content we're about to create for you. So what I'd like you to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications, and you'll be notified when we go live. You can also RSVP on our Facebook page. Thank you so much for your encouragement and support on what we're doing, and we hope to see you there.
And that last part was made for YouTube, so that there are the little subscribe buttons and all that.
nice.
I forgot to plug in my laptop, and I'm gonna have to shut this down here. And this is the time, so we're good.
Okay. Well,
So thank you, everybody.
see you Friday,
We'll see
everybody.
you Friday.